This video is brought to you by my new book, Genesis Saga: A Call to Aid. If you're craving a science fantasy adventure that's more in the spirit of Star Wars before Disney ruined it, then feel free to check out the links in the description. It's available in both ebook and paperback. What I've loved about the Borderlands series has been its over-the-top personality, fun gameplay, sense of humour, and how with each new entry, Gearbox have managed to improve on what came before. I always felt the first game was overrated, but as each new entry came out, they addressed what I found to be lacking and delivered something memorable. In the case of Borderlands 2, it was not only the gameplay but the story, giving us a villain to go up against right off the bat alongside a new cast of unforgettable characters, the most notable of which was undeniably Tiny Tina, a deranged pyrotechnic-obsessed little girl that was just bubbling with charm, personality, and extreme mental illness. She was also the focus for that game's best expansion, Assault on Dragon's Keep, a Dungeons & Dragons themed expansion that was so well received that it's become the basis for the latest addition to the series, the spin-off game Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which throws itself headfirst into the Dungeons & Dragons themed fantasy from top to bottom. That'll leave plenty of fans satisfied with what's on offer, while leaving plenty of other fans disappointed by certain decisions and the current state of things.
Hands to me, hero! Which is to say, put me down near the theme bloom. Oh, would you look at that? I'm all reloaded.
Our adventure involves Tina and her friends, passing the time after their ship crashed while waiting for rescue with a good game of bunkers and badasses. We play the role of the newbie, with our own custom characters as we try to rescue the Wonderlands from Tina's recurring campaign antagonist, the Dragon Lord. A good setup that's undermined by the same problem that plagued the story of Borderlands 3, its narrative is lacking and outshined by the side content. I'm not lying, while the commentary from Tina and her friends can be entertaining at times as they interject and influence the world, it tends to be rather hit or miss. With Tina herself, it's a sad case of too much of a good thing. Her charm wears out quicker than the prior games here, and some of her quotes are nothing short of groan-inducing, alongside other characters that are forgettable. More than once, I did wish there was an option to turn the commentary off. However, the side content has much better narratives. Hell, I've gone on quests where they told fantastically memorable stories, like an alchemist finding love with a goblin, helping Claptrap try and fail to become a master blacksmith, aid a goblin liberation group called the GTFO fight back against their false god, help two metal bands prove whose bards are the most metal, and of course help Claptrap on a quest for a legendary spell. Hell, I'll even admit that the main story still manages to have its own highlights, like the reason we need a bard to christen our boat or the Dragon Lord himself. He's actually one of the more likable characters, and that's because he comes off like Satan from South Park, a sympathetic bad guy who is aware of the flaws in the story he's a part of. He's no handsome Jack, but he's far from unlikable.
Wait, what?
Wait, what?
Wait! Load! The hours? Now, adventurer! We're flying up! Those in the kingdom! You come!
That is not how magic missile works.
But what about the whales? I care about nature!
The problems with the writing in the main story overall come from two sources. The first is that Wonderlands continues a trend from Borderlands 3, an attempt to defang and make the humour less edgy and possibly offensive. The second is that there's been a conscious effort with this particular entry to make it more appropriate for an all-ages audience. Hell, the game even goes out of its way to poke fun at this change, with references to things like pints of soda, or Wonderland's version of talk cursing being loudly bleeped out by guitar riffs. This doesn't mean there aren't jokes that aren't funny, because there is, but with this direction there are many more misses than hits, and I do hope this is a change that's kept exclusive to this particular spin-off. The gameplay though shines bright like a diamond in steam-powered Giraffe's metal hands. It's not that different from the prior titles, but we get some aesthetic changes more than anything else to fit the new fantasy themes, and ones to the character progression. We've got a variety of steam-powered assault rifles, coal-powered submachine guns, crystal-field shotguns and flintlock rocket launchers, as well as some crossbow pistols. The Borderlands loot generation system has translated well, even if it is brought down by a sizable number of the guns just being, well, reskins, or the lack of non-gun based weapons, like say magic swords, wands, or chakras. However, grenades, on the other hand, they're now magic spells that have recharging spell points rather than being dependent on ammo. This is awesome because it makes them more readily available in a tight spot, while giving you one extra resource that you don't need to focus on too much when you need an extra advantage in the middle of the thick of the action. Meanwhile, the character progression has received one addition that makes it something I hope gets carried over into future Borderlands titles: attributes. When we level up, we now have stats like attunement and dexterity, as well as the other usual things, and these can make small tweaks to combat that can have huge implications as they build up, like more devastating critical hits, reduced cooldown on your spells, or even higher maximum health. It slots in perfectly alongside the traditional perk-based progression. There's also additional items that we can equip, like amulets, rings, and armor, and these add further modifiers, while the armor adds specific bonuses to the classes they're restricted to. This all works, and I'd love to see all of this return side by side with the badass progression system in a future title. Hell, the game also has a healthy variety of in-game cosmetics that are not tied to microtransactions too, which is shocking. There is a golden armor pack that you can buy, but during my time with the game, I found a far more diverse array of color schemes, armor textures, poses, and banners that weren't DLC being sold on Steam. So it's nice to see that Gearbox didn't decide to milk this game for money in the most blatant way. The first round of DLC we have received though is another story, if the universally negative Steam reviews are anything to go by. But I only played through the base game content, so I can't comment on them.
I would just like to inform you that you have come all this way for naught, and you will not be permitted to fight me for my weapon
There's also another addition to the game in the form of an overworld. This was done more as a homage to, say, classical JRPGs, where you'd explore the overworld and run into random enemy encounters. And that is very much the case here, except they only show up in tall grass, like in Pokemon. You can also use this to get your hands on side quests and also fulfill some optional random missions as well, in order to not only grind, but also get some loot. I would say overall that the overworld does feel kind of pointless in the grand scheme of things, but it's by no means a detriment to the game, and it's a fun little addition that at the very least does give you some extra things to do, even if they're not exactly high on the priority list. However, one thing that did impact my opinion of the game was its performance. It was bad. I mean, really, really bad. To give you an idea, my computer can run Elden Ring and it only meets the minimum system requirements for that game just barely. But after warming up, it runs butter smooth. Wonderlands though, it chugged a lot. Like, I mean, a lot. I'll let this footage speak for itself. However though, as my time with the game did go on, I did notice its performance did improve significantly. So maybe this is something that's been patched out, but this was still something that frustrated the hell out of me, and I can't say whether or not this is still the case on other platforms. And it's because of this, I have to say this. I want to recommend the game, but I can't, thanks to everything else plopped on top of these performance problems that, even when it did improve, did not go away in its entirety.
A lion
Overall, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is a fun addition to the Borderlands series that introduces some changes that I hope are carried over to the mainline games, but further defanging of the humour, the lacking main story, and its bloody performance I experienced stop it from being a classic like 2 or the pre-sequel. If you can get it at a good discount, then by all means feel free to grab it, but at full price, no. Wait till it's patched into a more appropriate state, then I'd say you can consider the full price of admission, unless you can find a better deal. Awesome, sweet! Thanks for checking out this video. I hope you really did appreciate it. If you really enjoyed it, then please hit the like and the subscribe buttons for all future content and also help me out in the algorithm. Now for the next gaming video, I'm planning to take a look at the upcoming Cult of the Lamb. Fun fact, I actually got to try out a demo of this at PAX and talk to some of the developers, and man, I gotta say, I liked what I saw then, and I can't wait to see what the final product is like now. Anyway, I got all that and more coming up, so please stick around like usual.